Roar Nation, Promise Keepers is back. July 31st, 2020. Estimated 80,000 men will be gathering at the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Speakers are going to rock the house. It's going to be a full lineup, and on top of that, worship is going to be amazing. Why am I telling you so far in advance? Because tickets are on sale and they're slowly selling out. So, that being said, I hope I see you there. I am planning on going. Go to promisekeepers.org to get info and tickets. Again, go to promisekeepers.org. See you there.
Welcome to Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You, the podcast that focuses on Christians that are active in everyday life. Join in as we speak to everyone from successful business owners to educators to athletes about their faith and how it helps them reach out and revolutionize those around them to do the same. And now get ready to roar with your host, the voice of manifestation, John Fuller.
Hey, Roar Nation, John Fuller here, fired up this morning talking about the power of forgiveness. We got lots of good stories, and I'm sure you do too, but saying that, I'm going to introduce our special guest today, Derek Stone. Derek, you fired up and ready to go?
Absolutely, man.
All right, so Roar Nation, check this out. So after working to support his family and his struggling artists, Derek Stone chose to reevaluate his life and his way of thinking, and in 3 short years grew a small one-man show into $1 million company. This amazing transformation came about through this decision to forgive his father. And I love that because we're talking about forgiveness and how it launches us, what I believe, into purpose. So that being said, Derek, why don't you give us a overall view of kind of just who you are, your family, and what you do?
Sure. So I was a starving musician for about 14 years and put my life through all kind of craziness to try to make that dream happen. But the beautiful thing about it is it did get me to Nashville. And it was one thing that when I stopped performing, my construction business started to take off. And something had to give in my schedule. And I was just like, gosh, something's got to give, because I kept sacrificing family events and just really upsetting my wife and missing stuff. And so I stopped performing in 2014. I had my 8-year-old son there in the show. It was about 5,000 people. And it was just amazing experience. And I got kind of depressed about it because it was just one of those situations where it wasn't that I was not performing anymore. It was because I felt like God had given me this message and then I lost the platform to tell it. And so, yeah, I've been married for 17 years and, to my high school sweetheart. We have 2 beautiful boys, Ashton and Noah. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing. I'm a general contractor here in Nashville, Tennessee, and we've been in business for about 10 years now.
Love it, man. Okay, so you said something. We're going to obviously bounce around because I just get excited just on different things that you say. So you talked about performing. Did you feel like at the time you were living out your purpose, kind of like what God had created you to do? Did you feel like you were getting that through playing music and stuff, or did you always feel like there was something more?
I did, because there was, it was one of those situations where you really just wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it came about at the end, was like, this message, how can I tell it more? And it became, I'd say a little bit of thing at the, on stage. And then I would tell people to come talk to us at the merch table. And then that's where their true ministry would happen, where people were dealing with stuff and they'd say, thank you for saying what you said, or that lyric really spoke to me, and I've got your CD and this song, man, has changed my world. And man, that's really what it's about.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I got to ask though, what was your band?
Well, it was about 3.
Okay.
So we went from, and overall, if you want to listen to any of my music, it's on YouTube under Derek Stone. The album's Mind Games. And there is a video on there. It's called Southern Princess. Is the only music video I ever did. And that song was actually about how I met my wife. And so, it was kind of a happy song. But so Derek Stone, and then there was another one called Forevermore. And then after Forevermore, there was Flawless Pursuit. And I kept, it was kind of a bummer, but every time I changed my name to a band name, it always fell apart.
Really?
And so it was just one of those things that was like, maybe God was trying to tell me I needed to do it on my own. I don't know.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I've been there. I've been there more with construction. I've had a couple businesses that way, and God's just like, well, we're going to just make this just you for whatever reason.
For sure.
So, okay. So on your journey, we'll go back to your past and talking about forgiveness and stuff, but through your career and through your life, have you had like an inspirational scripture or just kind of a quote that stuck with you?
Man, I've got three of them. Three of them that there's really right now are just kind of in my wheelhouse right now and two of them are mine. And one of them is a guy that teaches all the TED Talk guys. I met him a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. His name's John Bates. But so the first one is word of mouth advertising can't be bought. It's performed. I tell my guys this all the time. It's being present in the moment and doing what you got to do in the moment to make sure that you do a great job that homeowner will recommend you. That's what I've grown my business on, word of mouth advertising.
So I wrote that down real quick, but what did it say? Word of mouth advertising can't be bought.
It's performed.
Okay. I like that.
The next one is perfection is the enemy of action, and you have to take action to overcome fear. And that here lately, that's just been with this new book release, it's something new. And I've had just a lot of fear, like, what are people going to say? What are people going to do? You know, are they going to, you know, that kind of thing. And really just been like, Derek, look, you just got to act on it. You just got to go act on it to get through this fear junk and perfect it as you go. I know it's not going to be perfect when I start it, but perfect it as you go. And so that's been kind of a motto for what I'm doing right now. And then the John Bates, man, I tell you what, this dude like blew my mind because of what he did with this pen. He said, let your audience be the hero. Don't be Luke. And he took this pen and he took this and he says, be Yoda. Yeah. And I was like, dude, that's
the great. Guide.
I know, right?
Don't be the hero, be the guide.
Be the guide, exactly. And man, that blew my mind to just touch in the moment where I'm trying to transition a little bit to public speaking and this book thing and being on podcasts and stuff. I really just want to be, you know, like that, be the Yoda. And I'm trying to understand what that looks like in my life right now. So
if you want to really catch that, this is for our audience too, I'll throw you guys a nugget. So Donald Miller, who is there in Nashville as well, has a company called Story Brand. He's actually written one of my favorite books on branding and stuff. But if you'll read his book, Story Brand, he talks all about that as far as from a marketing standpoint. The book's called Story Brand. But anyways, that's what he's kind of talking about. He said every movie, every book, everything is written from the context of, he talks about don't be the hero, be the guide. And he talks about like basically being Yoda, but he walks you through the process. So it's great for you. So is anybody listening to this, if you're in speaking or entertainment or just really anything in the industry where you're helping people, that book's fantastic because it helps you walk through the process of helping people and how to kind of step out of being the hero and being the guide. So nice. It's a great book. Highly recommend it. We're throwing out free marketing bones to
I tell you what's really interesting. I'm in a mastermind group called Iron Sharpens Iron, and it's with Aaron Walker.
Yeah, well, Aaron, you're part of the group, so yeah, Aaron, and then I do the BOP. We have our own business group called Business on Purpose. We work with those Scott guys. Beebe? Yep. So we work with Scott, and we hold our own group as kind of a subgroup of his and stuff like that for business.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, so he was in that group with Don Miller and Dave Ramsey for 10 years, and so that's really neat.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Small circle, man. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about your book, Why I Should Forgive, and why don't you go into the back history? Let's jump back however many years, and give us the journey of the book and why you wrote it.
Well, not to sound terrible, but it's why should I forgive? And that the thing is that comes from a place of contempt, and a little bit of I had a parts of it were great childhood, parts of it were awful. My parents were divorced when I was 5, and then we moved we kind of bounced around for 3 years at my aunt's house or my grandma's house or that kind of thing. And then my mom moved us finally got a place of our own, and it was a Section 8 project house in a neighborhood. And my mom ended up getting married to one of the neighbor guys, and he, if I can be honest, he was a child abuser. So I thought that was going to be a lot easier to say that. But so I was sexually abused from 8 to 12. And then she finally figured out what was going on and divorced him. And, she got 4 years later, she ended up moving us to Tupelo, Mississippi, outside of Tupelo, Mississippi. So with that, I was just a bitter dude, and I lived behind a facade. And my bitterness was more towards not only the guy that had done that, but also towards my dad, because I felt like it was his place to protect me from all that. Yeah. Like, man, this was your job. And like, so I became really, really bitter about it. And the first time I ever told somebody about it, that person took advantage of me as well. And it was god awful. And actually that at that moment, because this guy was in the church, he was a youth pastor. And, I started running from God. I was like, God, if you have people in your church like this, dude, I'm gone. I'm done.
Yeah,
man.
For sure.
I was done. And man, I got sexually involved with a girl that was 3 years older than me. I did every drink I could find, get my hands on, which was actually surprisingly easy in the hood where I was at. And was just, like I said, the last 6 months I was in Mobile, my mom knew I was going off the deep end. And I think she was like, we've got to get him out of here. We've got to get them out of here. I have a twin brother. And so we were the only two left at home. So moving to Tupelo was like, I thought it was culture shock. I'm from Mobile, is where I grew up at. And then
why was it culture shock?
Because culture shock was more of just a big city, and moving to Baldwin, Mississippi was in the middle of nowhere. It was just farmland and country folks. And to be honest, I had kind of judged a book by its cover. There was some of the most wholesome people I'd ever met in my life. Some that just really bend over to help you out.
Yeah, in the country?
It was surprising. Yeah, in the country, man, it was surprising.
Yeah, it's totally different.
It blew my mind. And so on the first day of school, like I said, man, I was actually, let me rewind, 3 weeks before school started, I was cussing like a sailor. Drinking all summer long that year. And when I went in, we were going into the 11th grade, and something happened 3 weeks before, and I just felt like God was coming to me, and he says, hey, this is a new start for you. You're not going to screw this up. And I pulled out a box that was in my closet that I knew my Bible was in that I hadn't unpacked yet. And
so you felt like you heard that voice audibly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like to say that because some people hear different, and I want people to understand, like some people hear, some just read something, but
sure. So it's like that prompting, and I heard, this is a new start for you. You're not going to screw this up. So I was like, okay. So I pulled out my Bible, and about 3 days I stopped cussing and drinking, and kind of cleaned my life up a little bit. And on the first day of school, man, this dude pops out of the bushes. It seemed like this guy named Will Davis, full of energy, man, like just full of energy. If you can imagine like a guy in a boy band, this is what this guy was like. He was just real clean cut, athletic looking. And he says, dude, do you love Jesus? And I said, yeah. And he said, he said, sweet man. And like all these people just kind of joined around us and gave us high fives and whatever. It was pretty crazy. But that guy took me to a football game that night. And then that Sunday he invited me to church, and then that Sunday night to a youth small group. And man, I just realized I was where God wanted me to be. Yeah. And so I just opened my arms up and I said, God, just mold me and make me what you want me to be. And I've been doing that, I've been getting molded ever since. So it's been quite an intense deal. But if you fast forward a couple of years, the youth pastor, Mark Keys, is now working for Dave Parks at Freedom in Christ Ministries. Well, it was Freedom in Christ. Now it's Passion Ministries. Actually it's Infusion Ministries. I'm sorry. So him and Dave Park kind of partnered up and did this, but they were doing this Stomping Out the Darkness conference. At this conference, he said bitterness. The topic was bitterness versus forgiveness. And when he got done, he said, some of you need to forgive a parent or a sibling, or an aunt or an uncle. And all this, my heart started racing, and I kind of started to clench my fist, and I felt that voice again for the first time in 3 years. It was like God said, Derek, I want to use you, but I can't because you have this bitterness towards your dad, and I need you to forgive him. And I kind of like angrily in my head shouted back at that voice saying, why should I forgive him? I said, because he didn't pay child support, I had to take cold showers because the lights got cut off in candlelight. Because, and because he didn't pay child support, I didn't know where the next meal was coming from. Because he didn't show up and wasn't present, we got sexually abused and that kind of thing. And, but then God, that voice said something to me, like, I didn't just holler at him. He said just real calmly, like, but I'm the father to the fatherless.
That's good.
And I wanted to know what that was like so bad. I said, God, I want to know what that's like so bad. I want to know what it's like for somebody to tell me I have what it takes, that I'm enough, that, I said, you know what, if you'll give me that, I'll give you this. And so I said, look, I'll forgive him. Broken, man, just on my knees crying for about 2.5 hours, dry heaving. I was crying so hard, just brokenness. When I got up, I felt free. I felt like I no longer had to hide behind that facade that I'd been keeping up, and that I could truly be the real me. And now I look at my prayer did change to, God, would you restore the relationship between me and my dad, because he hadn't talked to us in 10 years.
Yeah.
And so that was the big deal, was it changed to that. But what was crazy is that, like, the next day, and God was already doing it, he put me into 5 families, like almost like an adopted kid. It was crazy, man. I saw how they conflict resolution with their spouses. I saw how they were godly husbands and godly fathers in a different way that I'd never seen before. I saw how they were contributing members to society and their community and in church. And so I had different examples to model my life behind. And so when I look back at it, God had given me that, and so yeah, that was the kind of the transition that happened. And when I say, when my business did what it did, I was so grateful. I kept looking back to see what it was that triggered my journey to success. And that one decision to forgive my dad was where my life changed.
Okay. So I got to go back. I'm like kind of laughing, but I'm not, if that doesn't sound terrible, but I'm like listening to your story. We have very similar stories in different senses, but I'm just curious, what was your progress working through with your dad? Because that's something, I'm just being honest, I've never talked about this on the show. That has been a roller coaster ride for me over the last 20 years, because we've had some, like, where I think we finally get some breakthrough, and then we hit a really low point. And I've had to come to terms, and I don't know if this is right, I'm not saying it is or isn't, but I just had to come to terms. I'm like, okay, so my dad doesn't know how to be, and same with my mom. They don't know how to be the parent that I need them to be. So therefore, I've set a wrong expectation. I took the responsibility and say, okay, my expectation's wrong. And what they have is the best they can give. And that's what I've had to work through. But that has been really hard because, like you, I've been through abuse and just different things. And working through that emotion has been really difficult. So I'm curious how you have worked through things with your dad.
Well, it took 6 years of prayer. And that's one of the reasons I talk about in the book is the waiting room. The waiting room is terrible, but so many times we have to do it. You just got to think about the next thing, right? And what I had been praying for 6 years, well, I was in the middle of the deer woods, man, in middle of Mississippi in the woods. And I'm on a 4-wheeler and my phone starts vibrating in my pocket, and I pick up the phone, and my dad usually never calls unless it's my birthday or somebody's in the hospital. It wasn't my birthday, so I was expecting somebody's in the hospital. And he picked up the phone and he's like, "Hey, Derek, how's it going? Can we talk for a second?" I was like, so he was happy. I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he said, he goes, "Look, I don't want to be known as somebody who's walked out on their kids, and I want to be in your life and my grandkids' life. And I just want to ask you, if you'll forgive me for the way I've treated you guys for the past 10 years. Man, I smiled from ear to ear and I said, "Dad, I forgave you a long time ago, but I've been praying for this day for 6 years." And how that goes for me, it was that 2 months later, we went to his house on Thanksgiving, and he got to see our little baby Ashton, who was not walking yet. He was crawling. And to me, that meant a lot. And over the years, when we've went out and visited, there's moments where we're around each other where I can kind of chat about things. And what people have to realize about their parents is one, sometimes you have to accept the fact that your parents are the best example of what not to be.
Yes, man. Yes. And
you know what I'm saying?
But you learn from that, though. Yes,
you do.
I've had to. Yes.
And you also have to take a little bit of perspective, a perspective pill, I call it, and realize they are the way they are because of the examples that they saw.
They went through, yeah.
And they were taught.
Yeah.
And a part of forgiveness, a huge part of forgiveness is, in order for true forgiveness to happen, you can look at Jesus. Something has to die.
Yeah.
And what has to die for so many people in their relationships that they hold on to dearly, and they hurt, they deeply hurt, man, about, man, I wish it was this way. I wish I had a buddy of mine, that same conversation you're having with me, man. He's like, Dad, dude, I just have to realize that my dad's not ever going to be what I need him to be. And it's hard for some people, man. It really is. And I get it because I've been there myself. But what they really have to do is, so for something to die, is you have to mourn that. You have to mourn the thought of what you thought that relationship was going to be. You set it, your expectation. You set an expectation. And in our lives, we have to mourn the fact that it's never going to be what I want it to be, what I hoped it would be. But I can set a boundary as to what it is, to where I can protect myself and my family to keep from getting hurt. And forgiveness is about you, and trust is about them.
Yeah. One thing, I'd share this real quick with my mom. She was in and out of prison and different things, and not really there after we got in high school. Well, that was another thing, a situation I had to work through, forgiveness with my mom. And one day I just finally broke down. I said, Lord, give me a heart for my mom. I want to see my mom the way you see her. Show me that. And I just had this overwhelming just feeling of love towards her, but I felt like I was going through, like I could see her history. And he was showing me how she had been abused, and she had lost, my brother died when I was little. She had lost another kid. Her dad committed suicide. There was just this string of events, and the Lord just showed me just how broken she was and how she couldn't deal with, why she was an alcoholic and a heroin addict and all those things. And as I started to see that, like, I went from this moment of bitterness to like grief for her, because I could see how broken she was and she couldn't. And after that, it really was kind of weird for me in the sense that it was a quick process. Like, I felt like that literally happened in a day. And I was just like, wow, my heart just went for her. And that kind of restored our relationship, or at least me towards her. And it's just amazing what God can do, like everything that you're talking about, when you're willing to lay it down and just say, God, I can't carry this burden, because we weren't even designed to carry it in the first place, but we're willing to lay it down, how he can just restore us. And then also sometimes that relationship with the other person, if they're willing. So Derek, we talked about forgiveness and kind of your process, things you went through. I'm a little curious, has that been a process? Have you had a couple? I felt like I had a meltdown when I hit 30, and the Lord told me to deal with all of my skeletons in the closet. I literally woke up one day, this is after like months of crying, and the Lord was like, you have a closet full of stuff, and we're going to deal with it. And that was a journey. And I have another friend that told me, I asked him, I said, he's kind of a mentor of mine. He's in his 60s. And I said, have you ever dealt with that? And he started laughing. He goes, yeah, when I was like 30, 45, 50. And he goes, and I'm planning on having another one too. And I thought, wow. So I'm curious, did you do that also?
Yeah, mine was, I think, at that moment. So I had that breakdown and really just, I went through the list, man. And then shortly after that, because the guy that was facilitating the deal was my youth pastor, he brought me through the 7 steps of freedom that Neil and Dave talk about. And in the 7 steps of freedom, you deal with, bitterness, sexual sin, you deal with, generational curses. and stuff like that. And man, I bound spirit of divorce in my family because that meant I'd seen that coming down. Spirit of poverty, I've seen that coming down the pike. Spirit of fear, and so.
Where did you learn this? I haven't even heard it. 7 Steps of Freedom. What is that? It's
The Bondage Breaker.
Okay.
And the book is The Bondage Breaker by Neil Park and Neil Anderson. Dave Park and Neil Anderson. And they usually do a retreat, but they focus on who you are in Christ. And it's almost like when they're dealing with the self-critic, that's when you're dealing with you. It's always about renewing your mind. When those thoughts come up, like you're beating yourself up, or pretty girl walks by, renewing your mind. And I didn't know what that talked about, what that really meant until I read in James where it says, think about such things that are pure and holy and wholesome and lovely. Think about those things. And the kind of the Holy Spirit put those two things together for me and was like, yeah, when you're going through this is what you do. Renew your mind. This is what renewing your mind means. And so I would go back to like a time when, our first son was born, and we had a boat, and we put him in a little car carrier with an umbrella over him, and we were boating all day long, just having a blast. I think about when both of my boys were born. I think about my wedding, when I married my wife, and those things, something that's lovely and heart, that you love, and those memories. And so when you're going through a tough time, you have to think about all that. And then gratitude too, man. Gratitude is a huge part. And that was, you were talking about surrendering before we got locked up. You were talking about surrendering and letting go of those things. And that is number 4 in my book, is the chapter, the 4th step is surrendering the outcome. And I talk about Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat went out there and he puts his hands up and he's like, God, you gave us to this. It's your job to protect it, not mine. 2 things happened. One is that God fought the battle for him because it wasn't Jehoshaphat's battle. It was God's battle. 2 things is that Jehoshaphat still had to show up.
Yeah.
He had to show, it says he marched out to the valley and people were singing and worshiping, and they watched as God's army, they destroyed themselves. And 2 times in my life, really more times than that, but 2 big times was when my wife got diagnosed with cancer. And then when my little boy, Noah, when he was in the womb being made, he had a little gray spot on his brainstem, and they told us 3 things. They got to be transparent. They said it could be Down syndrome, he could die stillborn, or it can disappear. And I called 5 of my best friends and closest friends and family, and I just said, hey, can you pray for this situation? And, at the end of that situation, I prayed and said, God, look, there's absolutely nothing I can do about this situation, and I'm going to give that to you. And me surrendering that, because it's not my battle to fight, I'm giving that to you in faith. And what that did, one, is it empowered me to press on, and surrendering the outcome is a big part, because when you empowers you to press on, you can face things that you would otherwise not have the power to do so. You jump into the victim mentality a lot of the times. Why me, man? Why me? And you just have to move. Why not me? God's got my back, and surrendering that to him is a big deal. Because God will fight your battles for you.
Amen. Yeah, when you say all that, there's a secular book that I just read by a Navy SEAL called Extreme
Ownership.
Extreme
by Jocko
Ownership.
Willink. Jocko Willink. Yeah, it's a great book.
And I really enjoyed that because, funny enough, I got sidetracked and didn't finish it, but I caught the gist of the whole book, and it's basically just like, own your crap. And I loved that from the sense of like, it doesn't matter what it is, just take responsibility for your life. Like, it doesn't matter what's happened to you, what's been done to you. Like, in my mind, I think either God's is who he says he is, and he's big enough to do this, or he isn't. And I'm just going to let him walk me through the process of forgiveness and all these things. And I can take ownership of that or not, or I could be a victim. And I'd rather, according to scripture, it says we are victorious.
That's right.
And I'd rather walk in victory than defeat. And I think sometimes that people just have to understand that, like, yeah, a lot of bad things have happened to a lot of good people, but we have a choice to move forward. And again, it's a choice.
Well, and that's the thing, you say that, and that's the thing that most people don't get or they never hear, is that, we can't always choose what happens to us, but we can choose how it affects us and it molds us. We do have that choice.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So as your career shifted a little bit, because I like to ask people, like, when they feel like they've kind of stepped into what they were created to do or what they're supposed to do, how do you feel like you saw that shift, or when did that shift happen for you?
Well, I had one guy that's worked for me. I've had 3 guys that have left me that I believe all 3 of them are making 6 figures, but the first one did it right. He left and was very honorable about it. The other 2 kind of did some stuff, but I had to practice forgiveness. Yeah. It's a muscle. Yes. And it's a choice. I will tell you, it's a choice. And a repetitive choice you have to make every day, and not relive those things. But for me, it was when I saw these guys start to branch off and go on their own thing. It was so rewarding for me to take somebody who is at a point in their life where they were just like, I need something different. And when I empowered them to change their own life, I said, look, you can do what you want to do with this business. I just, be open and be willing to learn as much as you can. And those 3 guys did that, man. And it just put a passion in me that was just like, man, you empower people to change their own lives. Yeah. And that's my passion, man, is to empower people to change their own lives. And that was kind of how it started to happen. And then back to the performance situation. After I stopped performing, I was just beating myself up because I was just so depressed that I wasn't performing anymore, because it really was just a message. At that point, I felt the need to get the message out. And I felt like God just came to me and says, dude, write it in a book. And 5 years it's taken me to get it there. There were 2 other versions. And when I got to the point in those 2 versions to where you say, look, it sucks what happened to you. And you're right. It should not have happened. And I'm sorry that it did. But if you want to get on to the other place emotionally, you have to choose to forgive them. And my self-critic just ate me alive, dude. So much so that I stopped writing for 2 years. Wow. And so much so that, because it was just like, you're going to offend the world telling them that. You got to get over it. I love you, but you got to get over it. If you wanted that, you have to put that vision of who they want to be. You put that vision of who you want to be, man. I love you, but you got to get over it if you want to get there. And so for 2 years, I didn't write anything. And then 2 mentors of mine came to me and said, it's Tom Schwab and Tommy Breedlove. They came to me and said, wait. Do you believe it? And I said, absolutely, I believe it. And they said, then write it, because there's always going to be a critic. And those 2 guys kind of pulled it out of me. And in the last year and a half, I've got it finished and edited. It's been through 2 edits. And we believe we've got the final version. We're just writing the notes in it right now, and then it goes to layout. So I'm excited about it. But yeah, that's my passion, to answer the question in long form, is to empower people to change their own lives. That's what I love doing, among other things. Is my favorite thing to do, to watch people.
Yeah, I think when people have been through, guys like myself, even my wife, when you've been through a lot of trauma and you've worked through it, or I should say working through it, but if you've had some really huge breakthroughs, you kind of have this aha moment. You're like, man, if I can do it, I know you can. Mm-hmm. And I know it's possible. And it's like, you see people, sometimes I see people and I almost can see the bondage that they're in immediately, whether it's poverty or unforgiveness or sexual sin or just whatever it is that they're in. It's like you see it and you're just like, man, this is so doable. Like, if you'll just implement these steps and just allow the Lord to walk you through the process, the breakthrough you could have is everything you've ever desired. But you have to be willing to lay it down.
Absolutely. And that's what I talk about. The book is really just nuts and bolts. It says, wanting and defining what that life looks like. I talked about in order to forgive, you got to figure out what you want, where you want to be at, and making that want a need. I gotta have that guy. That guy that I want is over there. I've got to figure out how to get to that guy. And then the next thing is going with your gut. And sometimes that takes cleansing your surroundings. Yeah. And people that are negative, people that bring you down, that don't lift you up. Man, you gotta, you've got to, if those people aren't lifting you up to get you to where you need to go, then you have to make a choice to get those, either set a healthy boundary,
Yep.
And then the third thing is open heart surgery. And inside open heart surgery, we talk about the self-critic and taking responsibility for your own actions and how to make a decision. Because a lot of people don't know how to make a decision, using their goals as a filter, running every goal or every decision through their goal as a filter to make that decision. A lot of times it eliminates the negative.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, dealing with self-critic, the cost of bitterness in the waiting room. And then from there, it goes on to surrendering that outcome, like we talked about. And then from there, the last step is gratitude. Just how, happiness and gratitude are different sides of the same sort of joy. You can't be a happy, joyful person without being grateful.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And you can't be grateful and happy if you're a bitter, revengeful, angry person.
Yeah.
So,
amen.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up for our audience too, and you've heard this, and anytime you've been in the business world and done self-education or whatever, but they say in the secular world that you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with or what you listen to and stuff. And, at a point in my life, I literally started looking at like, okay, what are my books? What are my friends? What am I listening to? And I started summing that up. And if it didn't align with who I wanted to become and who God said I was, then I had to make the choice of like, this person or this thing or whatever it is not healthy for my life. And it's gone. Like it just didn't meet the cut. That's not who I want to be. And I think a lot of times people don't, scripture talks about in Proverbs is it birds of a feather flock together? Or am I thinking, no, what?
I think that's a book.
That's a book. I'm thinking there's a scripture. That's hilarious, man. I'm thinking there's a scripture that talks about that though. And it's not iron sharpens iron, but there's another one. But it just talks about counsel of friends. That's hilarious, man. I cannot believe on national podcast I screwed that up, but that's great.
It's all good. It's all good. Man. There's grace.
Yeah, there's grace. But anyways, that being said, that you have to look around you and just say, are the people in my life, do they influence me the way of the person I want to become?
Absolutely.
And if they don't, you got to cut them out.
Mm-hmm. And that's not easy. I will tell the audience, it's not easy because some of those relationships are lifelong.
Yes.
But when you realize they're toxic, bro, when you realize they're toxic, you got to make a decision. When you feel it in your heart, that just doesn't sit right with me. You got a choice. I mean, seriously. And in Deuteronomy 19, I think 30, in Deuteronomy, it says, I bring all heaven and earth together that as a witness that you would choose life. And he says, oh, that you would choose life, that it would go well with you and your descendants. Man, when I read that verse, I was like, gosh, how many times does God bring heaven and earth together to let you make a decision? And so when I make decisions too, man, it's like that. I want life. I want life for me and my family. And so how do you go get life? Is this bringing life or is it tearing my life down? That's the easiest, it's the easiest qualifying factor, right? Like you said, is it building me up or is it tearing me down? It's
I got to grab this real quick. I'm like 90% after I just hacked that last one, dude. I'm going to look this up. This is funny, but John 10:10, it says, I've come to give you life and life in abundance. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to pull it up just because after that, I'm like, I don't want to jack with the audience. Yeah, it says, this thief comes to only steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And I talked about this actually at our church a couple of weeks ago. And a lot of times, I struggle with the thought. I used to think, well, abundance was material possession. But that is so not even the scratch of the surface. Abundance is joy and peace and the fruits of the Spirit and love and relationships and all those things. Jesus came to restore us to live a life of abundance in every area. And but again, and all going back to your book, and I hope our listeners grab it, is you have to walk through the power of forgiveness and allowing Jesus to cleanse you and heal your heart.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, okay. So as we wrap up the show, Derek, I want to ask you, we skipped a ton of questions because I always go off on stuff, but I'm just curious. One that I never skip is if you could go back to the younger you what age would you go back to? What advice would you give yourself? What pep talk would you give yourself?
Okay, so I thought about this, and I've thought about this for a while. I would go back to my 20s when I was 20.
Okay.
I had been married for I had just been married. Got married when I was 19, turned 20 in April. Yeah. So I would go back and I would say, stop playing music. Stop playing music and invest in Amazon, Google, and Netflix. And then, and then I would say, music was not your dream, your family is. And that, I would listen to your wife. She's a gift that, every time you don't listen to her, you will lose. And, she wants to play an irreplaceable role on a great adventure. And there's at least 3 times in our marriage that I took her out of that role, and it caused immense damage. And so I in 2018, we went to marriage counseling, and I just had to fight for my marriage. And that's what the second chapter 10 in the book is about, what forgiveness looks like in a marriage. And man, that could be a whole nother podcast, bro, if you want me to come back.
Oh yeah. But, dude, I got plenty of stories on that one. We could trade some. Well, we're kind of branching out. We're going to start doing different podcasts on faith, family, fitness, fun, and finances. We call it the Fuller Five. But you and I can come back on, and we'll talk about marriage and how stupid guys are.
Yeah. Well, I do know that I would definitely say, because I mean, every time I've not listened, women just have this discernment feely thing. I don't know, man, it's God given. I don't know what it is, but they know. It's like a BS meter. They have a BS meter that's so much higher than us as guys, because I'm coming from an abusive background. Excuse me. I want to believe the best in people.
Yeah.
And I get taken advantage of a lot doing that.
Yep.
But my wife, man, nope, they're going to take advantage of you. Okay. All right, cool. Let's go. So yeah.
Trying to learn that as hard as okay. So, Derek, I'm going to give you kind of the last word as we wrap up the show. What is a piece of parting advice you'd like to leave the audience? And also in that, let us know where we can find you and connect with you.
Sure. So I thought about that too. And I just really have this kind of quote that I just wrote down last night, and it's kind of a long one, but it says, people don't act because they are scared. They are scared because they don't know. They don't know because they won't learn. They won't learn because no one has ever showed them the value of knowledge. And I'm not talking about formal education. Never before has it been easier to learn. Audience, if you can hear me out there, I changed my future and I changed my life with the click of a button through YouTube and asking people what they do, best practices in the construction industry. And, you have to take action to overcome fear. And so I just want to kind of let that sit with you guys. And to find out, I just got my Amazon pre-order link yesterday for the book. You can go to derekstone.online, and that's DEREKSTONE.online to check that out. I'm going to put the pre-order link on there, and I'm going to try to do it for you guys specifically for your people, so you can share that on the notes as well for your audience. But if you ever want to check out me live or checking out some of my videos, I have a YouTube channel that's SRNR TV, which is a lot of how-to videos on construction. But yeah, I really just
SNR?
SR&R TV.
Okay.
And so yeah, and let's start a conversation. If you want to start a conversation, you can find me on Facebook. I'm in Nashville, so just check me out there. But yeah, derekstone.online is where you can reach out to me, and it's linked to all my Facebook and Instagram and all that.
Awesome, man. Well, Derek, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I know how painful it can be, and it just kind of how it stirs up emotion. But I just want to encourage you. Like you said in part of the show, there's always critics, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I think if you don't have critics, you're not doing something right. Absolutely. And I just want to encourage you to go forward, because you have a testimony and you have a story that's going to allow people to get freedom and to get healing. And I just encourage you just to go with boldness. And like Joshua, he talks about, he says, don't be afraid. And the Lord just kind of told him, just go out and do your thing. And I just encourage you, man, just go out and do your thing and just allow people to receive the healing. Like I looked at the front cover of your book. Obviously it's a black heart and it's peeling away and you can kind of see the red. Yeah. And I just see you as, man, that's just what you're doing in people's lives in the construction industry and through your book. And as people are going to read it, and the Lord's just going to be pulling away the darkness on their hearts and allowing them to be who they are because of you taking the step to do it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. So hold on just a second. Roar Nation, we love you guys. I hope you got a lot out of this. And hopefully the editing came together. We got broke off in the middle of the show, so we're going to piece it together best we can. And hope you guys just make the decision to allow the Lord to heal your heart. And it's a process. It's hard. But as you heard Derek's story, and I can testify for my life and for Casey, my wife, that if you allow the Lord to do it, the healing and the breakthrough that you'll get, you'll look back and think, why did I not do that sooner? So anyways, if you guys need help, need anything, again, Derek said you could reach out to him or reach out to us through Facebook. And we'd love to hear your story and anything we can do. So love y'all. Remember, be real, be authentic, and be you.
That's all for this episode of Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You. Be sure to go to areyoureal.org for your free questionnaire to identify your gifts and talents and how you can use them to help people become leaders and catapult them into their destiny to help others become the leaders of tomorrow. We appreciate you spending your time with us and look forward to helping you reach out and revolutionize next time on Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You.